legitimately set the camera up, press record, and it starts to rain. It's gonna be one of those days. All right. I was recently asked to go over how I make patterns. And I figured rather than just pulling something up and going over how I make a pattern, or you know, like with the Alchemist, the State Alchemist shows me going over a pattern and how to replicate it. And I figured we would do one straight from 100% reference. That way there's no pre-made pattern. I've made this costume before, and it's an interesting costume. So let me play over here a little closer so we can both look at and see what we're seeing. So this is, of course, Amidala's Ladybug Dress from the Phantom Menace. It's a neat dress, right? It's iconic, it's gorgeous, it's a beautiful dress. It was difficult to make, but it turned out fantastic and I was super happy with it. And you look at it and it looks like it's really, really complicated, but it's not. There's a couple of key points, nothing too big to deal with. Let me play over here so you can see, and I'll walk through all of the things I'm looking for as a costume maker on this dress. So, like I said, it looks relatively complicated. It's not. We got to break it down into a couple individual pieces. Let me grab a pencil. There is the main dress body, right? There's this first tabard, which is just one piece, and that's a shoulder overlay. And then there's the hood and the top tabard. The hood is a full hood, right? It actually flips up, and the underside is the same as the shell lining here. The nice thing about this one is Natalie Portman is an exact size. We know exactly how tall she is, so we know exactly how wide to make this. But you want to scale it off of each individual person. And this looks really complicated. It's not. So we've got this here. I know I'm doing this the hard way. 12 inches. And her shoulders are 5. That would make, mine are 20. So it's 1/4 scale. For her, this should be roughly 4 foot. I'd say probably 3 to 3.5. So we know that the circle is a 3.5 to 4 inch circle. These are neat. I call it the Ladybug Dress. They light up. You can really see it in you can really see it in this one. So we have to do something translucent there. But the nice thing is everything is easily countable, right? She has one dead center. So she has one dead center. This is the center back. You can tell because it's where the zipper is. And there is not one there. So that means there's an odd number of bugs. I think there's 5 ladybugs altogether. In between each ladybug, there are 4 panels, which means there are 20 panels altogether. So we're going to focus just primarily on the first dress here. All of this is cording. There's a lot of it. Luckily, we have way more resources now than we did when I first made the dress. When I first made it, it was brutal because, you know, you couldn't quite see everything, and this was all we had. Now there's tons of behind the scenes where you can see just how detailed everything really is. You always expect pattern making and costume to be like, haha, we're done. But it's always like, is that a seam? That might be a seam. No, that's definitely a seam. But if that's a seam, that means I have to redo the entire thing. That can't be a seam. Only an idiot would put a seam there. Why is there a seam? That's not a seam. It's not a seam. There's no seam. It's not a seam. It's a seam. So, pattern making, not glorious. Not difficult, but just not glorious. It's a cool looking dress though, right? That's an interesting angle. The sleeves are interesting too. But the shape itself, super simple to make. It's not form-fitting. Round is easy. Everything is evenly spaced, and that works in our advantage. It actually makes the entire thing way easier to make. So we're gonna do some math, we're gonna do some drawing. We'll play over, we'll do that now. I should turn this. If I turn it, I can clamp to the end and not be a complete idiot. I'm gonna sketch a bit. No, you don't need to see most of this. I'll bring you in when I have a quick sketch so we can figure out what we're going on. Figure out where we are at and what we are doing next. But this is the dress, right? This is the whole thing. Neck under that piece. And just so we're all clear, this is not a tutorial on how to make this dress. This is just how I make patterns. So I sketch everything out and get it to where I like. So now we put in the known numbers, right? This right here would be floor to shoulder. This is your widest at the bust. Then we want to set up what the panels actually look like, which are something kind of like that. So to do that, we need to know how wide this is. I believe I had it down to 3.5 to 4 foot. I think 4 foot. I think 4 foot is right, but it just doesn't seem it, because that is that big. Yeah, 36 is way too small. I'd say 4 foot's about right, depending on your height. I'm about 6 foot. So at about 6 foot, 4 foot's about right. So it's 48 inches. Circumference is pi r squared. R is 24. That means, man, what is the circumference of a 48-inch circle?
According to an Alexa Answers contributor, if the table is 48 inches around, then the circumference is 48 inches. If the diameter of the table is 48 inches, then the circumference is about 150.8 inches.
Math. So if we have a 4 foot circumference, it's 150 inches for a 4 foot diameter. We know that there are 20 panels. 25, so 50 divided by 20 is 25. That doesn't seem right. If only I had a thing on me at almost all times that had the ability to have a calculator. 7.5. So let's assume, we can do a lot of assumptions at this point, that we want 40-inch bust. This straight down, right? So you're going to want, if you're a busty girl or guy, go with that measurement. If you're a hippie girl or guy, go with that hip measurement as your widest, because this needs to look as tapered as possible. I mean, right around the waist is where it starts to bell out. You want to go with your wider number here because it's just easier. And again, we're just making that dress. Every dress is going to be different. Every costume is going to be different. This is just how I make costumes. I always start with a reference, and that's what I make. So we're going 7.5, huh? So if we're going with a 40, that's 2 inches. There are 20 panels, 40 inches. Puts them at about 2 inches. Does that look right? So from here up is 2 inches. From here down is 4 inches. 7 inches. It's actually 7.5. It's not counting seam allowance. So that's going to be gradual and straight, straight and gradual. So it's going to look, when I made them, kind of like this, right? This arc is way smaller than you think it is. And that's 7.5 is 2 and 2. So from my hip to the floor, from my waist to the floor, about 37 inches. And then from the top to the bottom is about, give it 30. So yeah, it's about 67. Since it bells out, we want to give it, that's 17. We go 18, and that's 11. We're adding 7 inches for the curve. So how I did that, right? That's about the curve I want, which would put me here and here to this point. The straight line from there to there is 10. That's about 18, which means we've added 8 inches onto this curve. 7's fine because I think I overmeasured. That will give us a nice gentle curve. This is our panel piece, right? And we need 20 of those. That makes it the bulk of the dress. For the ladybugs, we're gonna sew them on after everything is put together, so they don't really matter yet. Plus, you kind of want to make them off of what they are. Our local mall has a vacuum form for this because he's the one I made the original dress for, and he's got a vacuum form, or a vacuum form buck of this shape. Were I to make it again, I would just have him pull me probably 6 clears, just so I have one to play with to make sure everything's right. And then I would do the same thing I do with Jawa eyes. I know, it's a lot to go off of. We're making patterns, we aren't making the dress. So we're focusing on the pattern right now. Sleeve's complicated. We'll move back a little bit. Sleeve's complicated, right? Because this line here, this line here, are the front and back. But normally, you would have your top seam here and the inside seam here. So we have to fold this back out backwards because we still want a seam to run the inside, right? Because it's where the seam should be. It'll make things easier in the long run. Then we have to start at this shape. So where most sleeves start like this, ours still will, right? Just that inside is there, and that outside is there. So then the bell has to correspond equally. That's where our seam ends, and it comes down to a point, back up, and then back down. And that line match up. So that's what the bottom of our sleeve should look like. I know it's kind of weird. To get this measurement, I am just going to make a loop I like. I think that's about right because it goes way farther than it should and it starts up higher than you think. So I think we're going to go with a 36. So this line needs to be about 36 inches. There are 12 segments per sleeve and the gradient from this to this is even. It's the only way you can get a nice even slope. So right here we have 12 segments. I'd say that sleeve is probably every bit of 18 inches. 18 inches looks a bit thin. When in doubt, pull up reference. I'd say from here to here is 20 inches, which means all of our segments here, there are 16 of them, 12 of them. Let's see what we got. It's inch 1.6. So I think if we make that instead of 1.6, we go 1.75 inches for segments. On the top of the sleeve, I think that'll work. And then at the bottom, from here to here, is happy with 36? 3 foot? I'm happy with 3 foot. So not counting this tail point. So from here to here, we're going 36 inches, which means here they're 3 inches each. This line is from there to there. This looks like a lot of garbage. It's actually most of the dress. It's actually the dress, not the rest of this. This is a whole nother thing. This is complicated. This is all individually stitched on, and it does go up into the collar, right? The back of the collar, I believe, has a zipper, which is covered by the hood. Might not have a zipper, might have buttons. Whatever snaps you, or whatever closures you want to use is going to be the best for this. This just goes over, but because this collar is relatively form-fitting to her neck, I don't think she can get her whole head through there. Maybe, but not likely. So we're focusing just on the dress on this. This is pattern making, right? It's weird, just to say the least. It is weird. I enjoy it. I've been doing it for a really long time, so all of this kind of makes sense in my head. It's just kind of odd. So I'm gonna move over to this clean sheet. I'm gonna draw out the sleeves so we can know exactly what we're doing with the sleeves. I may do them to scale. We'll see. Don't forget to eat. Most people get pulled into a job and everything else just blends away. Don't do that. Maybe 50%? Let's do 50%. Since I don't want to math. 18 inches. Now this segment, we're every 3 inches, so we'll go 1.5 inches. So from my shoulder to the middle of my forearm, since I'm making it off of me, I'm looking at about, we'll go 22. Just so I have an even number, we'll go 11. So right there is the top. Do standard sleeve. We went 20 inches. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a line here to here. I want 6 inches of bell. So we mark down 3 inches. 20 across, so we go 10 and 10. 5 and 5, because we're doing it in half. Does that seem right? Probably. So now for the fun one is every segment was 1.75 inches, which is not easy to cut in half. Because that makes every segment. Makes every segment 5/8. Let's see if that's right. That's a little off, but not much. Let's go 7/8. I was doing 7/8 because we're going 10. No, okay. Math is hard and complicated. I know, right? I could just cut that in half, fold it over, not have to worry about redoing all that. So we're just going to focus on one side and just half. Except we're not going to really be able to do that because of my weird wave. But if we were, that's what I would do. All of these segments need seam allowance. So I would draw the whole thing out, cut them, space them apart, and then do seam allowance. Or less of an even taper, sorry. Look at that. Lines up pretty okay. So far we haven't done anything weird, right? We're just drawing out a sleeve and spacing a bunch of segments. I know it's real easy when you've been doing this a while to go, yeah, it's nothing major. It's not. Okay? So now from the front of my sleeve down we want, I believe 18 inches? No, 20, 18. That should be just over 9. It's 9.5. That line is perfect. That's gonna be the inside line here. It's gonna be on the elbow. So it's gonna come up a little bit here and down a little bit here. Seems complicated. Once it's all drawn out, it'll look way more complicated, but it's not. I would consider this an advanced project, by the way. So this is the armpit. Let's write it so people can read it. This is the shoulder crest. This is the armpit, which means this line right here is top of the wrist, right? It's not. It is here. So when you hold your arm down, no, it's top of the wrist. The front of the wrist is the part that's higher. So that's how I want it to lay, right? I want it to come down farther. When in doubt, line it up with something. So from here to here, look at about 13 inches. We're on to 12. So from the highest point, lowest point should be a 6-inch difference. Seems a bit much. So if we make the wrist here, and then the back here, so this angle will gradually get less, whereas this angle will gradually increase. Yeah. Most of this is going to be useless to most of you. And I will assume by this point, 99% of you have already checked out. That's okay. It's going to help one person. That's all I really care about, right? So this is our middle point. So that should give us a decent point at the bottom. And then these should be the same size. So about 4 inches, nowhere near. Okay, that's what our sleeve looks like. Easy, right? So I told Kim, hey, I'm gonna do a video on patterning. She's like, yeah, that makes sense. She just got that comment about it. I'm like, I'm gonna do Amidala's red dress. And she went, isn't that the most complicated thing you've ever made? I went, no, not really. Maybe it is. It's pretty complicated. So we number them. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. That's the sleeve. Now, I'm gonna cut it out, and I'm gonna show you why we did it the way we did it. Remember, people, seam allowances hide all of our lies. So if we're a little off here, doesn't matter. If your stitching's a little wavy, also doesn't matter. All right, I'm gonna tape this together, and we're gonna see what we have. So my math was off, see? And like that. Easy way to fix it. I know I want this to taper this way. My paper doesn't like folding like a fabric does, so we're gonna have a weird wrinkle here. But if you look, let's back you up just a little bit there. So as the sleeve is here, the very front of it is higher than the very back, which is exactly what we're going for. You may need to have made the wrist right here. Making a mock-up, even if it's just a paper one, fixes just about everything that I don't quite like. That, let me back you up just a little more. That is what the sleeve's supposed to look like, right? Top of the shoulder. In the front, there's a curve and it wraps around. This might be a little too sharp, but I don't really think so. I think it's supposed to be like that. That's a perfect sleeve for this costume. Now we're gonna get rid of all of these seams. Here's the sleeve. Everything is said and done. So I had to graduate an angle here and here. That's it. Everything else looks pretty good. None of this is gonna be useful for any other costume. And that's kind of the whole point of this, right? I've been doing this for a real long time. And I'm just, I kind of just do the thing I do. It's okay to be new at a thing. Take your time, make your mistakes. You'll get there. Everybody does sooner or later. I like big rolls of paper. Paper keeps curling up on me, right? Fold the edges just a little bit. Now it's not. The circle, we know there's a segment dead center, and in the back, we're trying to get 20 out of this, right? So I want 10 on this side, 10 on this side. This lets us know a couple important things. I'm gonna try and get us a little better. So we know the sleeve is going to be here and here, right? You know there's a bug here, bug here, bug here, one here, one here. Does that seem right? I think that's right. So when we make our pattern, we'll be able to make a couple of changes here to make this look a bit better. Well, fit right. Every single panel is different, but from here down, they're all identical. So from here up is where they're different, right? So we can do from here up because they can all be connected. It'll make sense. Let me show you what I mean. We're gonna go 20 inches. So we got 20 segments, 2 inches apart. Keep in mind we're doing this at 50%. Yeah, 30 inches. So I'm gonna leave this here. Probably need it again. So right here is the front and center. We can do a simple collar. I want it to come down about an inch. Shoulders on me. 3 inches. Back up 3 inches. So basically making a wrap around at this point, right? Because it all just comes together and seams in the back. This will be where the sleeves are. This is the back where the neck is. So it's all gonna have to taper inched a little bit. Maybe. Because I put this at about 8 inches. And about 8 inches is here. Means we have 4 inches. Am I doing this wrong? Should go to 10. Actually, it seems about right. Get it down an inch. Seems about right. And then the midpoint. So since it's a tube, right? Front, back, this is where the zipper goes. This is where the arms are. We're gonna draw the arms in next. Right now, I'm gonna do all these little lines. Because there's a lot of them. This is gonna make up every individual piece that we will have to cut out, were I to make the dress, which I'm not. I may someday, just not this day. I know Destiny wanted it, but I'm not sure if I'm in the mood for that just yet. Seems like a lot. It is, because this particular dress is extremely demanding to make. But it covers a lot of interesting patterning techniques, which is why I decided to use it. Now keep in mind, patterning you usually only have to do half because most people tend to be relatively symmetric. Relatively. So we're gonna have a problem here. And that is when these get stitched together, there's gonna be a weird point. So if we erase these two lines and just make them straight, that will absolutely get rid of that problem. And it'll make the sleeve fold over a little better. Speaking of which, we need to measure this to make a hole the same size. 12 inches. Now this is where you could favor the front or the back if you want the sleeve to do something different. I know you want it more tear-shaped. So now I'm erasing this line here, because we don't need to put cording there. We're going to ignore this side. This is actually all of the pattern for the main dress, minus one small piece. I'm going to draw that on another page so I can cut it out, flip it, and have an even mirror. Go 1 inch. Half of 38 is 19. So these are our measurements from before. The 7.5, right? It's gonna have a slight curve. It does have a much more dramatic curve here than it does here. It doesn't look like a super dramatic curve, but it really is. When you put 20 of them together, that flares out a lot, right? Now I've added a little to this lengthwise, because when I put everything together, this is gonna have a weird nick to it that's gonna have to be rounded. So I want to give myself a little extra room. It doesn't seem like it, but these, that's it. That's everything. I'm gonna cut it out and show you. So the reason this is everything is because each one of these gets this attached at the end. Let me move this so we can see the whole thing. Here, let me just cut this piece out. I'm gonna pick everything up, lay everything out, and then we'll go over each of the pieces. Here are our three main pieces, right? The sleeve, each piece would be cut out, and then I'd add half an inch all the way around. I've been using a 5/8 inch seam allowance lately. I don't know why. It's weird, but you know, that's what I've been doing. but you'd add your seam allowance all the way around. So each piece would be cut out and numbered and labeled, right? Then we do the same thing with this one. This is the front and this is the back, right? So like that. That loops around. And you see how this got this weird point? I would probably end up cutting that off. I'd probably cut that off. Let's at least narrow that down a bit. That would make it a little higher on the shoulder. This is all an experiment anyway, right? We're not actually making this costume. Just showing you how I would were I to make it. And that goes around. It's still got kind of a point, but it's okay. I could have just brought that down more and then looped, but here nor there. That all gets attached. That would get attached like that, and all the way around. And for this one, this would get added to the end of every piece, right? So I would trace the entire thing out, this entire piece number 10 with this, and then the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and then the next one. That's a lot, right? What are we looking at here? More than 60? Way more than 60. We're looking probably at about 70, 78 wide. That's a lot. It was probably closer to 60 because Natalie Portman is much shorter than me. So if it was 60, do some math here. Either way, I would cut this piece out, trace the whole thing, add my seam allowance, cut that out as the pattern piece. This particular dress has a ton of pieces. There's 44 pieces altogether. Each piece gets a piece of cording in between. It's an in-depth process, right? We're not here for the making of this pattern. We're here for making patterns in general. But by taking each piece, one piece at a time, breaking it down, it suddenly becomes this unbelievable dress into just a lot of little work. There's a lot of little work in this thing, right? But all pattern making is just trying to think outside the box a little bit. Trying to think in multiple dimensions. Most people have problems with round. I messed up on the sleeves, so you know, I'm not immune from that either. But when you break it down, you look at each individual line, you find all your seams, reference. If you're unsure, ask yourself, does it look right? Does that look like that? Does that look like this? Same with any other costume. If you were going to make it, check your reference, make sure it looks right. If you're not going for Rebel Legion approval, if you're just having fun with costumes and fabric, do what you want. Enjoy yourself. If you're going to be scrutinized by others, keep an eye on your reference. So that is how I pattern, start to finish. That is exactly how I made Amidala's dress the first time I made it. It's a process. And it's a learning curve. I mean, it's real steep in the beginning. Once you get to a point, you're like, yeah, no, I got it. It's easy. It just takes practice. Read books. Look at fabric. Look at your own clothes. See how everything is put together. How the seams made. How the seams are made. Just explore the process. None of it is too complicated, right? There's a lot of people out there who go, I do this, so I'm amazing. And then they use hard terms to understand or remember. Arm's eye has been the one that's been floating around the internet lately. And that's just the hole you stick your arm through. I guess technically it's called the arm's eye. You don't need to be that fancy. You don't need to know all the terms. And the more accessible I can make this, the more likely I'm going to do this thing. I want everybody to learn, and it's a means to an end. But it's now kind of how I think. You know, I've been doing this long enough that it's just what I do. I look at it, I see a movie and I see seams. Well, I see that panel. I know that panel. Okay. Oh, pockets, real pockets. Pockets are neat. But a lot of people make it seem harder than it is, and it's not, and that's kind of upsetting. So don't think it's too hard. I think you can do this. If you're doing that Amidala, good luck. If you're doing anything else, just enjoy it. And that is the end-all, be-all, the important takeaway. Whatever you're doing, just enjoy it. Have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. Make a paper mock-up. Make a fabric mock-up. Get cheap fabric. Go to a thrift store, buy a bunch of blankets. Make a mock-up, see if it works. Just experiment and enjoy. So, that's patterns. That's how I make them. Unfortunately, every single pattern is different. There is no this is how I do this, because it's not. Other than that, if this is your thing, like, subscribe, comment. You know the usual. None of it's new, so whatever. I'll see you next time.